organizations keep making the same mistakes. So fixing broken transformation projects, fixing broken innovation initiatives, it was never a technology issue that was the root cause. It always was a people issue. We all need to get away from we can fix it alone, because that's not our world anymore. If we are talking about artificial intelligence, the question is, how can we leverage collective intelligence to also make decisions around where we are going?
70% of digital transformation projects fail. And when you take a step back and just look at the numbers and the time wasted and the resources that are going down the drain with that kind of a high percentage, it is mind-blowing. And I think you and I align very well that a lot of the times this is because of people, not the tech itself. Welcome back to Organized Chaos, the podcast for founders and HR leaders navigating the beautiful mess of scaling your company. I'm your host, Nahat Kerala, and today I am thrilled to introduce someone who has cracked the code on why most digital transformation projects fail. And it's not what you think. Meet Barbara Wittmann, founder of the Digital Wisdom Collective with over 25 years of experience as a CIO. She's also an author and has been recognized as the most empowering digital transformation businesswoman of 2023. If you've ever wondered why your latest HR tech rollout didn't deliver the promised results, or why your team seems to resist every new digital initiative, the conversation is going to be eye-opening. So let's jump right into my conversation with Barbara. Barbara, first of all, welcome to the show. Super happy to have you here and really excited for this conversation.
I'm excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
No, I appreciate it. Like after our first conversation, I'm like, okay, Barbara has to come onto the show. We speak the same language, and I'm hoping our listeners are going to really enjoy all the pieces of wisdom I'm sure you're going to drop on them. First off, Barbara, like some of our listeners maybe don't know who you are. I'd love it if you can start off by really sharing a little bit about your journey. You come from the IT and management space, and you sort of went into founding your own organization, the Digital Wisdom Collective. I would love it if you can tee it up and give us an overview of your journey and really what led you to founding the Digital Wisdom Collective.
So, first of all, I was born and raised in Germany. So, America is my home for 10 years now. And in Germany, I started not in IT. I actually started in sporting goods for 10 years, and I was seeing every business function firsthand. And then we got an ERP system in our company, and I was like, wow, that is so cool. I want to learn more. And that's what prompted me to change to the dark side of IT. That's how my colleagues back then called it. And, out of, stars aligning and whatnot, I ended up at SAP, and I was working at the headquarters for 5 years. I got trained to be a consultant, and they thought it was amazing that I brought so much practical hands-on knowledge. So that's how I kind of, slid into the IT world and thought SAP was an amazing company. But after 5 years, I was like, wow, this is helping clients and really fixing issues. They take a long time to do that. And I went out to start my own consultancy. And that was over 20 years ago. So I started my own consultancy in Germany, and I was basically filling the gaps that all the big consultancies would not touch. Some people called me the street sweeper of SAP, which was great, And from there, I morphed into dealing more with innovation projects and also fixing broken transformation initiatives. Alongside, I also founded a software development company to kind of work hand in hand with what I was doing. So I've been a founder since 20 years. And then I met my husband, who was born and raised in Boulder, Colorado, and we flipped the coin, and it was easier for me to pick up and go. So here I am. And basically, I started out here doing sort of the same thing as a one-woman show, not with employees anymore. And I was going more into the direction of interim CIO and strategic advisor. But what really bugged me and what I kept seeing over the course of 25 years is that organizations keep making the same mistakes. So fixing broken transformation projects, fixing broken innovation initiatives, it was never a technology issue that was the root cause. It always was a people issue. And what I always saw is that organizations have the right people with the right ideas there, but they are not empowered to actually speak up. Organizations would rather hire consultants to come in and basically be the intermediary, picking up exactly the ideas the people have and then, putting them into PowerPoints. So I'm like, well, maybe I can just make the life of organizations that are growing and transforming and also their employees a whole lot easier if I package everything I know into, what's now called the Digital Wisdom Collective, which is essentially a place where people can get upgraded for the age of AI and transformation, and also organizations can work better together in what we call an ecosystem.
No, that's a great intro, and I love that you mentioned these broken and failed transformations. I know, like, that is the topic that you and I really connected on when we first talked. Again, you're preaching to the choir here, because again, as someone who works in the people space and at the intersection of technology, and I'm someone who's worked a lot on HR tech transformations and still do. I fully resonate with what you're saying. A lot of the times you have the right people, you have the right ideas and so forth, but it's how you go about doing things in the organization that just derails you, really. Now, you and I have talked a lot about HR and technology and all these different things, but there's a stat that you and I talked about, and I've seen this online before as well, is that 70% of digital transformation projects fail. And when you take a step back and just look at the numbers and the time wasted and the resources that are going down the drain with that kind of a high percentage, it is mind-blowing. And I think you and I align very well that a lot of the times this is because of people, not the tech itself.
So I want to throw in another stat, because when we look at AI, it looks even worse. You're looking at almost 90% of transformation projects that have failed. So, essentially we all suck at transforming. We just keep slapping a new thing in front of it. We called it digital transformation. That didn't work. Now we call it AI transformation, which is great. It ain't getting any better. So what is the common thread? And it's the same for any technology you touch, and AI even makes it worse, because it really shows the ugly underbelly of all the things that are not working so hot in the organization. So what is true for everything is that with technology projects, a common foundation is usually missing, because we are starting out with, we think that having a common project plan is going to do. Maybe you throw out a couple of ground rules, and that's mentioned at a kickoff, and that's it. So one huge piece that's missing in our view is orientation, because people cannot see the forest for the trees. That is one piece that's huge. The other piece is that people were never properly empowered. When we have new technology coming in, the regular thing that happens is that you would send people to a training to say, "Ooh, this is the new technology, and now you learn about it." But we have never questioned, how is collaboration changing? How may responsibility change? And also, who's going to be the people who are really carrying the torch to be the front runners and advocates for this? We talk about stakeholders a lot when it comes to transformation, and there's a lot of talk about it. There's got to be a C-level stakeholder that's supporting it. That's all well and true. But who are the people in the middle who are actually stakeholders grounding this? Because in the middle is where execution fails. And why that is simply because you cannot delegate complexity anymore. Coming from the very top, you can just, roll it down. And then eventually people need to deal with the execution. And they are so pressured and spread so thin. They have tried to speak up, but no one really listens to them in the entire hubbub. So it really is about empowerment and making them better leaders to get a voice at the table.
Hey, Nahed here. Are you enjoying the podcast so far? If so, I have two quick things for you. One, go ahead and give me a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts, so more HR leaders and founders like you can find this content too. And two, if you like this episode, then you're going to love my latest course, the Startup HR Operating System. This is the course I wish I had 15 years ago. It is the culmination of everything I've learned working in startups around the world. And I have a special deal for you. The course launches soon, and if you join the waitlist by January 31st, you get the first 4 modules for free and an 80% discount when the course goes live. The full course will include more than 20 hours of video content, guest instructors, and tons of tools and templates you can implement right away. But you only have until January 31st to join the waitlist. So click the link in the show notes below and join. Now back to the episode. Now, there's a quote that I'm going to start quoting from you, which is, and you mentioned this on one of our previous calls, change starts in the middle. And I wrote that down on our first call because I'm like, it's something that when you step back and think of, it is so true. Yet to your point, when we're thinking of transformations on a digital level and so forth, it becomes about who's that C-level stakeholder. And let's be honest, typically when we say C-level stakeholder, it's two things. Someone who has the power to sign off on the financials of this whole project. And the second is, do they like the idea and believe in it enough to give it the green light for it to be executed? Now, apart from that, it's the Wild West, right? Just like you mentioned, a lot of the actual impact on how you work happens really at the middle and even below in the organization. And I love what you mentioned.
Yeah.
How is communication impacted? How are decisions being impacted? How are relationships between functions impacted? All these different things, to your point, are usually swept under the rug or not even given the proper time and assessment. And that quote unquote training ends up being, how do you find X feature and X button in the software? And that is the last thing you need to worry about, because that is just the tactical implementation. But the business impact of it is really the big thing here. And that is where the disconnect comes from, right?
Absolutely. And, it gets even worse with AI because we go with the same training patterns that we've had all along. And we want to, that's how we implement AI. But we don't think about how it fundamentally changes how we are working, how we are collaborating, how we are asking questions. And it really brings to light essential human features that are not working well. We are not good listeners anymore. We are not pausing to really understand the problem because we are so trimmed to instantly jump into solution mode. That's what costs money because you have to course correct. So you can save yourself a lot of pain, a lot of time, and a lot of expenses if you are training that middle layer in the organization and really upskill them to be carriers of that transformation. Because also transformation doesn't happen with a magic wand. Although people would love for this to be the way, it needs to grow. It needs to ripple.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, a lot of our listeners come from the people function and people space at startups. And the people function today is under a lot of pressure and feeling a little uncomfortable because, especially in the startup environment, it's one of those functions that traditionally is tossed work that no one else wants to do in addition to their HR stuff. But I'm hearing from founders more and more, and even peers in my network in HR, that they're being tapped to think of how to integrate AI and more technology and all that into the workplace. And there's a lot of conversation that I'm hearing from peers I'm talking to about what should HR's role be in this whole transformation. Should they be the ones who champion and own, quote unquote, especially today with the AI world we live in, the AI transformation, how it impacts work? Should this sit with the IT function? Should this be something that everyone collectively is owning in some way? What are your thoughts really on that? And that people versus technology bridge is still something that we're trying to figure out as most startups, right? What is your take on it? And what does the people functions role in your eyes and your lens look like in advocating and making this succeed?
So first of all, as a startup founder and owner, you are in a great space because you do not have structures that are so ingrained in everyone that it's still shapeable. So that's the good news. Now, if you are aligning key functions in your organization in the right way, you can really be the winner because everyone who's bigger than you is really struggling with their crust. And they cannot really shake the old ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. So in a startup, I absolutely think that the IT person and the HR person need to be attached at the hip. There is no such thing as separation anymore because they jointly need to come up with a plan. And I mean, yes, there is a little bit of territorial, haggle going on, what is what, but, swallow that. Get over it, because you are really shooting for a bigger picture. You guys need to create a bigger vision for how the company is evolving in a joint contribution. Ideally, you get the founder and CEO on board, and you hash out a plan together. If you now at this point consider functions to be separate, that's the kiss of death, because it all influences the other.
Yes.
Technology is in the DNA of every company. Now, as an HR person, you need to see what is the culture that is in the DNA of the company. That is the first and foremost question. So as an HR leader, yes, you need to come together with the IT person and come up with a joint plan. I think that is the new power couple in organizations, if they get along well.
Yeah, I love everything you said. This is validation for some ideas I've had in my mind, and some advice I've been giving to others is that when I approach it, like when I have companies come to me and say, "Hey, Nahad, we have this situation. We're trying to integrate," and I hear this word transformation thrown out a lot, just like, and I'm sure you hear it more than I do. And a lot of times, transformation isn't really transformation. It's like, how do we get technology to work in our favor, and how do we get better at what we're doing and achieve our objectives? Where I like to start typically from the HR standpoint is, what are the outcomes that you want to achieve on a business level? And let's walk back from there, because what I like to tell people sometimes is, let's forget the technology and tools. Because I hear things like, hey, we're considering SAP versus X, or we're considering Workday. You're asking the wrong question right now. The question is, what does a good outcome look like for you? Let's outline how that will impact your work, and what do you need to change in how you work today. And then let's think of what technology solution helps you actually implement that, and also make sure that it's sustainable and enforceable. Right? Yeah. What are your thoughts on that approach?
That's absolutely true. And you have outlined like a big framework we are teaching to people. And what you just said is exactly the thing that is so ingrained. We're looking for a solution before we know the problem.
Yes.
If you jump right into a solution, you also have a really hard time to get people excited about the solution, right? So if you have taken the time before to get the right voices at the table, and we all need to get away from we can fix it alone, because that's not our world anymore. If we are talking about artificial intelligence, the question is, how can we leverage collective intelligence to also make decisions around where we are going? So yes, you need to understand the problem. You need to pause for a minute before you jump into the next step. Just looking at software expenditure is entirely the wrong way. That's how you are totally blowing through money. And what happens then is you have a bunch of software products, and it's going to start looking like a cluttered garage. Mm-hmm. And you will not even know anymore what is in the very back of it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a perfect segue into the next question I want to ask, Barbara, is that I think especially in today's age, and I'm sure you see this as much as I do, maybe even more, the amount of tools that are out there and being thrown at you daily, especially the quote unquote AI-powered platforms, be it existing tools that now infused AI into their ecosystem, or new players who are just jumping into the market. It is just an endless barrage of tech that is being thrown at people day in and day out. And coupled with that, there's pressure from investors, from even bootstrap companies, from the founders and leadership. We need to optimize costs. We want to make sure that we stay lean with the headcount, because headcount is still the largest expenditure for most businesses today. Mm-hmm. But where do businesses start with all this? There's this, it's like throwing spaghetti at a wall, right? And that spaghetti being the AI. And then figure it out? Where do they start with this and all that pressure that's coming their way to implement stuff and do things very quickly? What do they do?
So what I ran a workshop this year at the Denver Startup Week that we called Mindset Before Machines. It was going through some of our frameworks we have, and it debunked all the assumptions there are. And this is exactly what you need to do, because everyone has different assumptions and everyone has different goals. And we had an example that we were putting in front of people exactly like that. The investors, the board is putting pressure on and saying, yo, you got to do this now. And then turn around to the CEO. The CEO is like, oh my God, I got to get onto this, because if not, my head is rolling. And that, it just kind of trickles down. The CEO kicks it over to the IT person. The IT person is usually a very, very cautious one and says, ooh, but we got to see how this fits into the larger scale. The CEO is like, oh my God, it's the IT dude again. Let's kick it over to the HR. And HR is like, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? Okay, let's give it a go. Give me 200,000 and we run a pilot, right? And this is how you burn money. So if you, first of all, educate people, and again, that happens in a very simple workshop, because there is a huge misconception of what AI does, because everyone thinks it is the unicorn shitting rainbows at 3 p.m. in the field.
That is awesome.
And it's not, because, if you walk people through examples they have in their company, what happens is you debunk most of the use cases they thought would be fitting AI, and you come down to it's missing alignment, it is missing responsibilities, or it is a very simple automation that you can do without even touching AI.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that is so true, and super resonant, because I've seen actual examples over the past couple of months. There's a company that reached out to me actually a couple of months ago, and I had posted on LinkedIn saying, hey, it was almost close to Thanksgiving. I'm like, hey guys, I'm in a giving mood. I'm going to take on a couple of startups, give you free advice for X amount of hours, right? Just come to me, happy to work with you guys. So I had a couple of companies reach out to me. One of them was like, we need an AI strategy. I'm like, to do what? Right? That was my question, to do what? And the leader just sat back. He just sat back and he just paused. Like, that's a good question. I'm like, that is the question you need to ask before you, like it's not AI strategy. It's about what are you trying to accomplish, and will AI help you get there, right? That same company, by the way, funny enough, they had Microsoft Copilot and ChatGPT deployed across the organization, right? Just that fact alone is all I need to know. That you're just throwing stuff in the company, hoping something lands, and then you say, well, we burned a lot of cash and we're trying to save money. You're not saving money now, are you? You're duplicating. And it's really just an example of what you just talked about, is you're doing the opposite of what you wanted to do.
Yeah. So right now it really is fear of missing out. And guys, be careful about that. Because AI is the magic machine. It is here to stay. But the question is, how do we go about this? And the first area you can start is really the productivity angle, and using either ChatGPT or Copilot or something, but pick one and formalize it. Because if you don't have anything, if you're back in your corner saying, oh, we got to figure this out first, we got to have an AI strategy, what your employees do, they have signed up for the free version already. And they are pumping in all sorts of information that you have no control over.
Yes.
So you need to get ahead of the game and, start from the very basics. What is our, if you have ChatGPT, what is your ethical foundation for it? Yeah. And that to me always starts with values. And also go about training people to ask better questions, because that essentially is prompt engineering. We come up with all these hideous terms that now we have to hire a prompt engineer. Well, I'm sorry, but we have to get better first at talking to each other.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm
That's
very
cool.
old-fashioned here, It's like...
No, I agree. I mean, look, it's like I compare it to, sometimes I give the analogy from the HR perspective, is that you hear all these terms like quiet quitting and all these stuff. Like, it's like that is just a fancy word everyone came up with for a disengaged person who's just checked out, right? People have been checking out since the Stone Age. If you don't like what you're doing, you're not on board,
Right?
you don't align, you're going to check.
Yeah.
All these terms we come up with to sort of just give a nice window dressing to something that is as old as time. And again, it's pumped out by all the social media and is just advertised. And every publication starts using that term as if it's this revelation. Like, guys, this is the same thing we've been dealing with 50 years ago. We just gave it a new name. Well, congratulations to you all. It's still the same problem.
Yeah, exactly. So, to me, AI is a co-creation project, and you will need to bring your employees on board. Ideally, you have one steward in each department that is spearheading it, that are a little bit more smarted up than others. But then you also have to come together and say, so how is it helping you? And you really have to get ahead of the curve and take the fear away of, oh my God, it's going to take my job. Because that's what essentially every worker is going to think. So to me, the biggest question in the game is, how do we really get to a co-creation with AI and human? But for that, we need to strengthen the human. So if I don't know as an employee why I'm here and what my superpower is, you will always feel like an imposter next to whatever AI solution you have.
Yeah, and remember when you and I were talking, you mentioned the human infrastructure, right? Like, we need to build that human infrastructure with that. So yeah, please go give us your thoughts on that, because yes, it's not a technology problem. It's a co-creation problem. And where do humans fit into this changing world of work?
Exactly. So human infrastructure is what we advocate for, and what we feel needs to be installed in every organization on top of any technology stack. We have a technology infrastructure, but we never thought about a human infrastructure. That entails that you have a certain number of people trained and educated, and, the wise leaders that are really reflected, and they create ripples. They are keeping things together like in a web of things. And they also know how to collaborate. They know how to co-create, how to make decisions, and they are infectious to others. If you talk about transformation, everyone thinks, oh my God, that's going to be a heavy lift. I'm going to need to do everything at once. No. You just have to train the right people, and then it ripples from there. So I think that's a common pattern I've seen all year, that we really need to take a step back and say less is more. But what is the right, inflection point for us? And human infrastructure also means, and that goes back to how HR and IT need to play better together, it also means an ongoing investment, an ongoing training effort. If you look at simple servers, we upgrade them every year. We test them before we set them live. We need to go about the same with humans. It is an ongoing training effort, and we need to give these humans places where they feel safe to try themselves out. We cannot expect that it's a one and done training and then you go on and you just apply it.
Yeah, I love that point. I mean, this is, I think, at the root of a lot of issues that companies are trying to deal with, especially those that are trying to throw technology at everything quickly without taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. For me, these relate to two things specifically. There's the culture aspect of the organization, right? And things you pointed to, like, am I providing my people with the right tools, empowerment, infrastructure, and learning on a consistent basis to where they are able to actually execute on this, right? And giving them a safe space with the understanding that, to your point, this isn't a one and done thing. And we're still in the infancy of AI. It's been around for 3-4 years effectively, really, in corporations being using it. But from month to month, the amount of change that is happening is astronomical. I mean, 2 months ago, people were laughing at Google Gemini. Now people are like, whoa, this is the next best thing. And its capabilities are just, way different. And it's like you're always evolving how the tools you're using, how you use them, how they impact your work. But something else which I love that you brought up is the training aspect. And I can tell you how many times I have heard this year. And again, this is a special year because most companies are under pressure from the market, and not a lot of companies have seen a drastic increase in revenues and growth. Those who are still growing have, but it's at a decelerated pace. So there's a lot of pressure. And typically from the HR standpoint, training and development is one of the first things that usually gets cut whenever a company is trying to get leaner. The funny thing is that, and to your point, in this day and age, given the pace of change and needing to keep up with that human infrastructure, but also your technology infrastructure, you cannot afford to not keep your team upskilled. The cost of not doing that is actually much higher than whatever it is you're going to be spending on development. And at the end of the day, the pace is so fast, you will be left behind very quickly if you don't keep up.
Exactly. So, friends, you got to get smarter about selling what you do. That's what I can say. And that's why you need to team up with the IT person badly. Because how I see it, first, and that's why we use the term human infrastructure. You need to be referring to what you're doing as an infrastructure building, a critical infrastructure that cannot exist without, or the company cannot exist without. The other piece is the IT gets regular budgets for upgrading infrastructure. So in my world, and this may rub a couple of people wrong, but it's all about how we are placing and selling things, I would make the human infrastructure an OPEX line in the IT budget.
Listen, this show is known for rubbing people the wrong way sometimes with out-of-the-box ideas. But I think that is such a great idea. Because to your point, they go hand in hand, right? You need to make sure you're upgrading your entire ecosystem's infrastructure, not just one piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
So if you think, and that's what I'm shooting for, that every organization has 1% of the IT budget dedicated for human infrastructure upgrades per year, that is a laughable amount.
Yeah.
And it will make an impact.
Definitely. I mean, 1%, again, most growing organizations I see don't even have a line item for that. It's an afterthought. It's what I love is that the excuse you hear isn't financial typically. It's like, we don't have time. We're moving so quickly. There's a lot we need to get done. So,
but see, that's the thing, and I do believe we are viewing training and talent in a very wrong light.
Mm-hmm.
Because, first of all, I think we need to redefine who our high potentials are. I think the metrics we have had are not applicable anymore, because what I see is not that the loudest people in the organization are the best to really push forward. It really is the quietest.
Yes. There's a stat I saw, Barbara, a couple of months ago. It was a study by McKinsey. And they had put some stats out to compare the impactful productivity and output from different levels of talent, be it, those people you would call the high talent density A players versus people who are, the typical employee who has, baseline skill set and so forth. Their study shows that, and it was validation to a lot of things that a lot of us know, but seeing the numbers is actually mind-blowing, that a top trained talent who is given the empowerment and they're able to make decisions and deploy their skill set the way they need to are at least 3 to 4 times more productive than the average employee. Now, take that, especially if you're a company that's growing and scaling, take that and exponentially scale it with your organization, right? So typically what that translates to is that everything you're talking about, everything that we've been talking about here is that empower your people, give them the means and the knowledge and the tools to be able to grow with the organization and upskill that entire infrastructure. And you are actually automatically becoming leaner, more cost effective, more efficient, and your ability to scale is actually much easier as you grow.
Exactly, but we need to tap into one more important aspect of human infrastructure and of scaling also when you talk about AI innovation, and that is the portion of mindset, because transformation will never work on an organizational level if you do not transform the individual. So we are talking about a level of personal development that will be mandatory, and that will define who is really a good employee and an employee you can push forward in the future. Because if you do not want to look at your own downfalls as an employee, you are a dead resource. That's what can be replaced with AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's such a powerful statement. 100% agree. Well, Barbara, you've got so many great insights on this episode. I just feel sad that we're running out of time here. But I mean, this was such a great episode. For those who want to learn more about your work, want to reach out to you, potentially work for you, get advice on some of these things we've been talking about, what is the best way for them to reach out to you? And I'll make sure all links and all contacts you provide are in the show notes.
Right. So the easiest is to go to our website, digitalwisdom.co for Colorado. What we do not have on the website yet, because it's evolving at the speed of light as everywhere, we are offering specifically 2 things starting next year for startups, scale-ups, and one is the Mindset Before Machines workshop, and the other piece is a 4-week ecosystem sprint where we are assessing where specifically is your ecosystem lacking, be it the human infrastructure or is it orientation tools and such, and then give you 3 pointers on where to really touch and evolve. So we want to make it accessible, easy, applicable for you guys. So that is a couple of points. The other piece is, and that's for the HR people, specifically, I have a Substack that I post on, Digital Wisdom Collective Substack, and you can get a lot of insight there.
All right. No, thanks, Barbara. I'll make sure to include all that information in the show notes as well. But no, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for sharing all these great tidbits with us. And I hopefully look forward to seeing you again at some point on the show, and we can reflect back on what has changed, if anything, in the workplace. Hopefully things go in the right direction.
No, absolutely. Would love to be back. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for chiming in. And that's it for Organized Chaos. See you on the next one.